Welcome to Unpacked, the podcast that examines how technology is reshaping business and our world, with this season unpacking the topic of generative AI. This show is produced by Think Tank at Lab 45, Wipro's Innovation Lab. My name's Stuart Black, and I'm joined by the voice of the show, Think Tank's innovation lead, Arvind Ravishankar. Arvind, how are you today?
Fantastic, Stuart. It's a good day to talk about AI.
Always a good day to talk about AI, and we'll talk about it very soon. We've got your deep dive interview with Rajat Monga, who's the founder of TensorFlow, which is an end-to-end open source machine learning platform, something of a big deal. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's amazing to have one of the pioneers of this industry join us. What TensorFlow has done for the AI world is amazing, and we'll cover some of that as we dive in with Rajat and his journey in TensorFlow and also at Google Brain, right? But to give you a quick snapshot, we're going to talk about how much business leaders should leverage tools and libraries and all the surrounding infrastructure to go quickly to market with AI products and services, right? Rather than try to build everything themselves, today there's an ecosystem of people, companies, and players who are there to help you. So how can you leverage that? How can you build on that? So it's going to be a good conversation.
Okay, looking forward to that. But before we get there, let's look at a couple of recent stories all about artificial intelligence. So first up today is a story that explores what every CEO needs to know about the European Union's new AI Act. This is going to bring into force some of the world's toughest AI regulations, with any AI apps that are deemed dangerous being banned. The obligations, which include greater transparency, tiers of risk, and penalties for those who break the rules, will apply to anyone doing business in the EU, not just the member states themselves. Those responsible for writing the Act insist these measures aim to promote a human-centric approach to AI. But Arvind, is the AI Act hitting the right balance for business?
You know, Stuart, I think it's going to finally depend on the fine print, right? What's really going into that policy and what are they writing into it? Because on one end, if you're too rigid, you're going to stifle innovation. And on the other spectrum, if you're too lenient, you're not going to be able to look out for the benefit of the overall public, the human-centric approach. So finding the right balance, I think, is going to be critical. And I sincerely hope that the people who are writing policy are involving scientists and thought leaders in this industry, right? And are really knowledgeable in this area, because you need those voices. You need the voices of scientists and PhDs and AI thought leaders. And I hope they're a part of that policy. Really, I think that's what I would hope for.
And are you impressed with what you've seen so far as we look forward to this, or are you nervous?
Anytime policy comes out, I'm a bit more nervous.
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story, right? A funny not a story. So Kapil Sharma at Lab 45, he is the VP of our AI 360 platform, and he has an interesting quote. It stuck with me, right? His quote is that technology sprawls and law crawls.
That's good. I like that.
So we'll see. We'll see what comes out, and depending on what comes out, you and I should do an episode on it.
Absolutely.
And comment on it, right? Comment on it. But I do want to also make one more quick tangential comment. I think it's important for our enterprise leaders to pay attention to these regulations, right? Because at Wipro, we have actually an entire team that is looking at regulations all the time. And our chief policy officer at Wipro, she actually sits in some of the leading government and academic boards where AI policies are built. And so that kind of gives us a knowledge on where those policies are going. And I think for large companies, it's really important to have those kind of responsible AI-based organizations or units within your organization, right? I think it's very critical. So this space is going to evolve quickly, and regulations are in their early stages, and they could actually disrupt business quite a bit. So paying attention to that is really important. I mean, the US government also just recently announced that they are banning the use of ChatGPT for some of their organizations, right? So I think, yeah, you got to pay attention to this space.
Absolutely. Watch the sprawling, but also watch the crawling.
There you go. Exactly. Watch the crawling. Yep.
Okay, well, moving on then. Our second story today is about OpenAI demonstrating its new video generating software, Sora, to Hollywood movie directors, which has sparked a mix of excitement and controversy. It's claimed that Sora has the potential to transform filmmaking, but it seems to have split the industry. Some filmmakers like Tyler Perry see the potential for innovation, while others, including Hayao Miyazaki, are very concerned about job displacement, audience alienation, copyright issues, and other things. Arvind, how far are we away from an AI movie sweeping the board at the Oscars?
Not too far away, I would say, right? Not too far away. 5 years would be my guess.
Wow,
where you start seeing AI show up at the Oscars. Sweeping the Oscars, not sure, but I'm pretty sure that 5 years from now you're going to see
maybe
AI,
in an animation category,
right?
Something like that.
Exactly. I mean, the amazing thing about innovators is that innovators always find ways to leverage technology and bring out new things to the market, right? I mean, look at what Pixar did with Toy Story, right? 10 years ago. It was pretty amazing. Nobody thought you could make a completely animated movie that would appeal to a more broader audience. Before that, animations were more for kids, right? Mm-hmm. And Pixar changed the game, right? They were innovators. So I would say embrace it and innovate. So yeah, Stuart, the uncertainty about humans and AI, I think that exists in all industries today, right? In every industry, even in my industry of strategy and innovation, that how much will AI come in, how much will humans play a role? I think that's a fair concern, and yeah, I think people should think about it for sure, but they should leverage the technology to innovate. What are your thoughts?
Well, filmmakers, as you say, maybe they shouldn't be nervous, but Pixar, I think, is an interesting example you picked there of one of the first to pioneer computer animation, but deep down, it was still very human storytelling. So I wonder how far it will be from the moment when AI can actually tell stories that really connect with us and have that humanity in the heart of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You're absolutely right. Like if you were to talk to Ed Catmull or John Lancaster from Pixar, they would talk about how important the emotions were. And actually, Pixar is one of the greatest storytelling companies, right? And they leverage technology to tell those amazing stories. So I'm 100% aligned with you. How much can AI mimic that and resonate with us in terms of emotions? It would be interesting to see, because what some of the scientists tell me is that if you, depending on what you expect out of AI, it may be able to learn human emotions too. If you train for it to learn for human emotions and be tuned to it, it may be able to do that. But these are gray areas, Stuart. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, would AI be even interested if it were to develop general intelligence, or in the far future, if it were to develop consciousness, would it even care about human emotions, right? Right? I mean, why would a computer care about human emotions in the future? So yeah, let's see. I'm interested to see how this will play out.
5 years, you say. Well, we'll be watching that space, and I'm not quite sure how an AI gets up to accept an award, but I'm sure we'll see somebody doing that on their behalf.
Or maybe a robot. One of those new NVIDIA robots are going to walk up. I don't know if you saw the new NVIDIA launch. They brought in some new AI-based robots into that launch. So maybe one of them will come for the award ceremony.
Arvind, can you just tell us a little bit more about today's interview with Rajat Monga, just to give us a full sense of what to expect?
The world of AI is being built on a very sophisticated software development industry, right? It's not like the software development industry itself is new to the world. And because AI is benefiting from all that knowledge that humans have developed for the last 30, 40 years, there are plenty of tools and resources for a business today if they want to build AI, right? They don't have to do it from scratch. And so I'm going to talk to Rajat Monga about what are these tools? What is available? If you're a business entrepreneur, how can you leverage the existing ecosystem and the fact that we have 35, 40 years of experience building software? How do you leverage that to build new AI products, right? That's what's going to be the conversation.
All right, well, let's get into it. Here's Arvind's interview with Rajat Monga. Our think tank focuses on researching emerging technologies that will shape your future. From generative AI to exoskeletons, we study the impact these technologies will have on business, humanity, and our planet. And through our podcast, newsletters, and social media content, we have a direct line to a truly global emerging technology community. So if you'd like to find out more about the impact these technologies will have on your business, then reach out to our team at lab45thinktank.com.
Hi everyone, welcome to the 5th episode of Unpacked. When I'm not working on technology strategy at Wipro and not recording podcasts, I love to do woodworking, and I build a lot of things in my house. And what I quickly learned about woodworking is that the tools and the infrastructure that you have makes a huge difference to your output, your efficiency, your speed. A good power tool can make the difference of easily 6 to 7 hours of work when you're doing woodworking. And the world of AI is no different. The types of tools and infrastructure that is developed to help you as enterprise leaders build artificial intelligence products and features are very, very important. And today we're going to cover that particular topic. We're going to unpack the infrastructure that surrounds you and the tooling that surrounds you that's going to help you as leaders build AI products and services. To help me unpack this, I have the ex founder of TensorFlow joining me, as a guest today. Super excited. He was also the founder of Google Brain, got his bachelor's in electrical engineering from IIT Delhi. And if for any of you who don't know TensorFlow, TensorFlow is one of the leading infrastructure platforms in the field of AI. To give you a sense, TensorFlow had about 100 million downloads in the world of AI and has helped millions of developers build the right AI solutions so far. It actually was a game changer because it changed people's perceptions of deep neural networks and what you could do with deep neural networks. Really excited to have our guest today. Rajat Monga is currently working on different areas of AI, worked on founding Google Brain division and also TensorFlow, and is an expert in this particular area of tools and infrastructure, especially as it pertains to training and inference. Rajat, thank you so much for joining us. Super excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having
Yep,
me.
I'm super excited, Rajat, about the things we're going to be talking about. But I always like to start off our discussions by understanding your journey into AI, right? What is it about artificial intelligence that drew you in? You've done research in machine intelligence, machine learning and systems, and you've been in this field for almost 20, 25 years. What drew you in? What's your interest in this area?
So it's always been an exciting space in that, I've been in software, been programming for a very long time, for all my life, pretty much. My first stint with the current form of AI in some sense, or neural networks, was back in college when, for my project, I was like, okay, pattern recognition, character recognition seems pretty interesting. In fact, I'd done a signature verification and matching project back then. And then for our core project for undergrad, I was thinking of doing something around character recognition. So that was there, and I did my undergrad, went into software, built all kinds of systems, etc. Comes 2011, I'm at Google doing ads. I'm sort of exploring what I want to do next, And I run into Andrew Ng, who is a professor at Stanford. Still remember one example that he showed where you could put something on like a tongue, like to figure out what kind of neurons, and use those in very different ways, like use the same kind of sensors to see and to feel, etc., and you would train those in different ways. And so, he talked about, okay, how he and Jeff were coming together to build, to see if we could scale these up. And I decided, okay, this is a great thing. I definitely want to do this. Let's go see what we can. At that point, it felt like if we scale these up, if we can take it beyond what's being done in labs today, it might be super interesting for where Google is. Right, the data is there, compute's there. There's a lot of work. I mean, nobody's done this before, but if we can do that, it seems pretty exciting. So that's how I really jumped in and went all in. Okay, let's see where we can go with this.
Amazing. So tell us about that journey, Rajat. As the founder of Google Brain, so much early, right, in its evolution, and then as a founder of TensorFlow, why did you get involved in these initiatives? What was the goal of Google Brain? What is the goal of TensorFlow?
So our idea was, okay, let's take a couple of these models that people have been applying in the labs for vision and speech. I think those are the two big ones early on, and see if we can scale it up to the kind of data sets we have at Google and see what comes out of it. Right? Can we do something beyond what we've seen? And so we did that. There are two things that came out in the first couple of years. One, on the speech side, we really leveraged these to uh, train on a very large data set of speech samples across within Google. What we've done with this one model change is basically 20 years of research in the speech domain. We got that much benefit from just that one change, and we were able to deploy that in speech as well. For across Google users, consumers. And then on the vision side, we published this paper known as the CAT paper, I guess, where we trained on a lot of YouTube videos. So we were taking frames from YouTube videos and training on that. And purely unsupervised, it's just figuring out what's interesting in those videos automatically without us telling anything. And one of the neurons in that model basically connected with, oh, it would fire whenever it saw a cat. And we realized, okay, cats are the most common thing on YouTube, so it definitely learns to recognize those, and that was super interesting, right? So those were the two early things. Of course, to build this all, that was a lot of fun in the early days of Brain. A couple of years in, we were starting to see, started with speech and vision. We're starting to see, of course, products across Google starting to adopt this, both on the vision side and the speech side. But also others, at some point, areas like ads, etc. By 2014, though, it was clear that, okay, we need a lot more. Both the research continues to improve and change in lots of ways. We want to push the boundaries of where things are. We want to do new kinds of models. We were starting to do what are called RNNs or LSTMs. You could think of those as the last generation of what people think of as transformers today, but transformers are a simplified form learning from some of those ideas. Um, and it also used new hardware, right? We wanted to use GPUs. In fact, we deployed a ton in the fleet. We were building TPUs at Google at that time, so we wanted to be able to leverage them well. And that's how TensorFlow was born. It's like, okay, we need to go way beyond where we are. And how do we think about what's going to come next? How do we support and build for what people want to do with this?
Amazing. So the need for the right tools and infrastructure to scale AI at Google led to the birth of TensorFlow, and that then helped the world in terms of its open source. Can you talk a little bit about TensorFlow, Rajat, for people who may not understand what a library is, what's open source, what's training inference? Can you give us a little bit of background on what is TensorFlow, what does it do for the world of AI?
Sure. So when we think of AI, that one of the most fundamental technologies that's being used for the current generation of AI in some sense is deep learning. And the way TensorFlow was designed from the ground up was to, of course, support what we thought we wanted to do in the deep learning space. And where, you could think of, for those of you who are math inclined, I guess, you could think of deep learning as essentially a function computation. Now, without going too deep into the details of that, the idea with TensorFlow was you could express any mathematical computation that you want to do in that framework, and it would basically optimize it for whatever hardware you had, distribute it across hundreds of machines, thousands of machines if you want to, or leverage accelerators like GPUs and TPUs. Really take care of all that underlying complexities so you don't have to worry about it. So the person who's trying to train a model and run a math model just needs to think about what they want to do logically, right? And we take care of the rest. That was the core idea. That's where it started. But very early on, we decided, what, it makes sense to make this available externally as well. So we open sourced it. Now, once as you think about this, what you do with this framework, people are first training their models so they can learn whatever they are doing, right? Whether it's serving their ads, whether it's classifying their images, whether it's a cat or a dog, or different kinds of things. Training the model itself is one piece. Now you want to deploy it in different ways, perhaps at scale. So if you are, say, a Twitter, you want to run maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of things per second, queries a second. If you're a small one, then you want to do it very, very cheaply and deploy small models. If you have a vision model, you perhaps want to deploy it on your phone. So today, if you think about doing machine learning or doing building your AI thing or running a model, you need some framework. You need some infrastructure, some software that really helps you do that. And TensorFlow is one of those that you can do, and a lot of people use.
Amazing. And Roger, this area of tooling and infrastructure, are you seeing it change and evolve with generative AI versus the previous models of AI and previous frameworks that you mentioned, such as LSTM or CNN or RNN, etc.? With generative AI, with transformers and some of these newer architectures, and also what they're capable of doing, are you seeing a change in tooling and infrastructure? We see a lot of startups emerging in this particular space doing different things from vector databases to prompt engineering, etc. Could you talk a little bit about that? Could you tell us on how this field is going to change and how should companies
Yeah.
prepare for this?
Yeah, when people think of generative AI, it's a certain class of models or large language models, as you think about it, that's really driving that on the tech side. In most cases, people think of these as foundation models, which really provide core, which have been trained on tons of data. And one of the key differences from the past is you don't need to train a model from scratch. In the past, if you thought about AI, you had to collect tons of data for the domain that you care about, train a model on that data set, and then start deploying. In this case, what we have is a model, and it's called foundation model for purpose, where it understands the world around you in some fashion. But essentially, it's learned from a lot of knowledge that's available outside on the web. I mean, that's the typical place people collect data, and in some cases from images and different things like that. Now, once you that's the part that frameworks like TensorFlow or now PyTorch or others help with in terms of training that. Once you have that model, now you still want to answer questions or do things perhaps around what you care about. And that's where these layers that Arvind just mentioned around prompt engineering or vector databases, etc., start to appear. How do you connect your data set, your ideas with what's there already? There are some cases where you further train this core model, and we can go into that in more detail later. But in many cases, you don't need to do that, right? I can ask a lot of questions to this model and get answers back based on the knowledge that it already has. But what people have realized is depending on how you ask that question, if you tell it, give it some context before you ask the question, it might do a better job. And that's what's called the prompt here. We are trying to tell the model, you know what, this is what I care about. Tell me about things in this certain way. For example, if I ask it a math question, it can try to do the math itself, but it's not very good at it. However, you can also tell it, you know what, I don't want you to do the math. Instead, generate code that will do the math for me or use this certain calculator to do the math for me. And it can do that really, really well, right? And you'll get the right answers. And that's basically what prompt engineering has been about. The other piece that Arvind mentioned was vector databases. And that's an interesting one, which comes where how do you connect the data that you have? One is, like I said, you can train this model on this as well. And there are trade-offs of when you want to do that versus not. What the vector databases do is help you look up or find the document that are closest to what the query or what the context is all about. And again, on the vector database side, there are a lot of open source ones, some supported by clouds as well. And you can talk more about, with open source clouds, etc. They all have different trade-offs that you need to think about.
We do see that within this tools and infrastructure that's developing in prompt engineering, vector databases, even model hosting services, the ability to fine tune, we do see that there's a movement both in the private sector and also open source. What are some of the trade offs? How should we think about that? How do we approach whether we use an open source library, an open source framework, or is it better to use a private company's framework and tooling?
Let's say you're not training your own model. Then the simplest way to go about and the fastest thing to do is to use an API that provides you a model. You can provide something, context, etc. Now, why would you use an API which goes someplace else? It's because it's the simplest way to do it. It will, of course, cost a little more because somebody else is managing all of that for you. There's your data is going someplace else as well, right? So that's something that you have to manage. Now, if you're worried about those two in any fashion, then you need to think about bringing that in-house in some fashion, whether it's in your VPC in the cloud or on your premise in some fashion, right? Again, to do those, you don't want to necessarily build anything from the ground up. At that point, if you're bringing it in some cases, the cloud vendors support doing this in your VPC as well, so you don't have to worry about that piece. But if you're doing completely on-prem, independent of that, then you want to use one of the open source models, and there are a variety of those that continue to improve. So depending on where you are in that cycle, you would be fine using an open source one for different model. You might be fine with a 10 million parameter model for your use case. But on that side, you want to think about, do you want to what's the quality that you want, what's the product usage that you want, right? That's number one. As you think about that, that's what drives which model to start with. Then, of course, the bigger the model, the higher the cost. So that's something you need to trade off. Now, the related piece that Arvind alluded to was, going to a proprietary thing, not just a say cloud, but say on the vector DB, picking a proprietary one or an open source one. There, the choice honestly is, and we can go into why, but there's a choice is same as any other software you would use. For most things today on the system side, for a database, for example, you could use an open source one, you could deploy it yourself, or you could take a proprietary one and use that, deploy it in any fashion. Which one do you do? And there are different reasons to picking that, right? Open source, the advantage is, okay, it's not going to go away. Even if the vendor goes away, you still have the code. In reality, are you ever going to change that code? 99% of the companies don't touch it. And in fact, often there are overheads of managing the syncing with the newest source code, all of that. Somebody needs to manage that. There's a cost to that. Unless you're at a certain scale, that often doesn't make sense. And you want to, even if you're you pick a database that's open, you don't necessarily want to manage it yourself, right? As a company, the way I like to think about it is what's core to you, and that's often not all of this infrastructure. And so if you can outsource it in some fashion where you don't have to manage it, it might be deployed wherever in your prem, that's fine too. But unless it's core to your business, unless it's core to your strengths, this may not be the piece that you care about, that you want to do or hold on to closely by yourself, right? So anyway, that the more you can give it off, the more you can focus on the key pieces that you have. And now coming closer to, how do you use it, etc. That's where, your products, how does it change your business, your products, etc. That's the closest to your business. And you need to think about, okay, how does this integrate? I mean, am I providing this product which will be much better with AI or Gen AI now? And so I need to think about that. I need to get the best people possible to make that happen and really change that. Um, on the maybe it's my business side. Let's say supply chain, right? Let's say there are some parts of the supply chain that could be optimized more if I have the right tools there or the right products there. Uh, if that supply chain is the differentiating factor for me, then obviously I need to do more in-house. But if not, it might be fine to get this other product that is really focused on supply chain that does a really great job and makes my supply chain a lot better, improves the business, and I don't have to worry about one less thing. Right. So that's the typical trade-off of build versus buy and putting those together. It doesn't really change with AI, right? It's just that there's more complexity. So often people want to deploy it, but not. We don't always understand all the different pieces that are needed, etc. And so you need to think about, okay, what will make it successful? Like, what's a good way of taking some of these newer tech and actually making it real and where it has an impact to my top line or my bottom line, right? What are those key things? It's not that different from any other technology that we would do in that sense. But of course, it's very, very powerful. So it's not something that we want to ignore, and we really want to, embrace it
Yeah.
in good ways.
Rajat, what is the quality that you are seeing, right? In your opinion, how is the quality of because Gen AI is a relatively new field, or maybe it isn't, right? For the for the mainstream world, it may be a new field, but people have been doing research on this for almost last 7, 8 years. So the quality of tools and infrastructure that you're seeing as of 2023, how good is it? How much can our customers rely on these different companies?
Yeah. So I think in different areas, it's a mix. Look, the lower level of deploying the models, that's fairly stable. That's pretty good. I think you can rely on that fairly well. If you think about the prompt engineering space and the plethora of tools that have come up there, they're very, very new, changing all the time. They're very thin layer as well. And there's not that much depth to them, right? They're not like focused on what you care about. They're not that hard to rebuild or change or replace, etc. as well. So does that mean you should build everything yourself? Usually no. I mean, if you can use a tool, why bother building it unless that's core? But at the same time, if there's something that can be simplified, ideally you want to build it in a way where it's just a piece that can be replaced later, because many of these are going to change. This area is definitely going through a lot of
Yeah,
change
it's
now.
going through a rapid evolution, right? Rajat, it's interesting, right? You have so all the different parts of building, fine tuning models, especially these foundation models. You now have libraries and companies that are helping you do this. So if I'm an enterprise leader, I'm going to go back to your point on leveraging your strengths and outsourcing the rest. What sort of talent and team do I need to build in my company? So if I'm trying to build Gen AI into my supply chain, or if I'm trying to build Gen AI into a product or a service that I have, what sort of talent and team do I need to build in my company? Am I looking at data scientists? Am I looking at AI engineers? What sort of skill sets, given the amount of tools and infrastructure that's available to me, how do I build that team? What sort of tools and what sort of talent do I need to bring on board?
Yeah. So one thing I would say, going beyond some of the kind of people that you mentioned, is how do you actually leverage this tech? That's still a core to making anything that you're building successful. And this often needs a person, whether it's a business person or a product person, who understands the technology a bit and can partner with the right people on the tech side to think about, okay, this is what we want to build. I think that's one of the key questions today that is often hard for folks in the enterprise to really capture, right? I mean, they are. It's possible that somebody else comes to you with a proposal saying, here's what we can do and stuff, and if that connects, that's good. But really having that person or those set of people who understand how your business is different, how your product is different, etc., and understand enough about AI to really help how do we leverage that here. I think that's sort of number one. Then in terms of the actual implementation, the way I like to think about it is, often today with GenAI in particular, because you don't have to do a large training on your data set, etc., it's very easy to build demos that are amazing. If I were at an enterprise company, where's this place where what's the cheapest first pilot that I can do, which is not a demo, which is can actually be deployed and used, which will have some value. It will showcase that value, and it shows how we can start to leverage it in our domain, right, in what we are doing. And so, what do I need for that? Sometimes it would for that I definitely need the right kind of engineers to put the right pieces together. This might be the data, etc., which continues to be the case, just like data scientists and data engineers before. That hasn't changed. Uh, and then the folks on top of it, maybe those are, what you might think of as AI engineers, data scientists, some mix of those, etc., who are actually going to do the stuff. Some of these, or all of these, can be outsourced with the right, consulting support, etc. Can also be in-house, and this depends on the company. It's it's not trivial to find really good talent, and there's a lot of demand for this. Even though we've seen a ton of layoffs in the last year in the tech sector, this area has continued to grow. So the demand for this continues to grow. I think upskilling folks into this area more and more, where they learn some parts of this, is valuable, and combining that with the right help from the outside as well is great. It doesn't have to be that, oh yeah, I need the best AI team across. You're not going to be doing research for building new types of models for most part, right? But how do you combine your strengths with what's out there in the best?
Makes a lot of sense, Rajat. In fact, so if I understand correctly, ensuring that you it's a rare talent, finding people who have domain expertise in your particular area, but also are tech savvy, right? That combination of domain expertise and tech savviness is what's going to allow you to figure out what problems to solve and how you can leverage technology. And then the second part that you brought up, in fact, we did an episode with Professor Anupam Datta from CMU, where he spoke about the fact that, very similar to what you said, the building the initial prototypes and coming up with an idea is very easy, but then taking it into production is where all the effort is. And so testing these models, ensuring reliability, you really need a good team to do that. And if I understand correctly, there's also a set of tools and infrastructure that can help you test and train, right? Could you talk a little bit about that? What sort of support infrastructure is there today for enterprises beyond just fine tuning and building the AI based products to test and take it into production? Is there a good infrastructure available for that?
Yeah, I would say, look, there's a number of smaller players who've been going into this domain, and some larger ones like say Databricks that can help you deploy some of these models and help you with others. There's this whole space of model observability, etc., that have been there for that were built for deep learning, etc., that continue to apply here as well with GenAI. Now, there's the whole space of responsible AI and a number of players in there where that are helping make sure that your models are not biased. They can test for that, etc. And those start to matter a lot. So those are valuable. Many of these services are also available with public clouds if you're using one of those. So depending on again how you think about your infrastructure, how you're managing it today, this can be an addition to those. If you're already in a public cloud and leveraging a lot of services from that public cloud, this is a fine thing to continue to leverage as well. If you've more relied on other vendors, then that's a good space to be in as well. They continue to be this space also continues to evolve. There are smaller players like the Arise AI and a few others as well that are doing well, good stuff there, and there are new ones that are growing as well. So it's good to really, as you think about what vendors to use, it's important to think about, okay, a, what are the key things that you want to solve for? B, like among the vendors, which ones provide the key features that you need? There are probably 100 other features that might be available that are good to have, but are those two things that you really care about? Are those available? And then will they scale with what you want to do, right? And so those are good. The one bit uh, less about the vendors, which maybe I want to mention in terms of just thinking about as you think about responsibility, etc. Governance overall is an important piece to think about, right? Where particularly when it comes to your data or your customers' data, right? If you are leveraging some of that data as well, how do you make sure that data is secure and not leaking, particularly in the case of these larger models. And if you're fine tuning and thinking about using that data set, etc., it starts to become more tricky, and that's an important one. For example, I mentioned fine tuning earlier. Why or when you don't want to do it. Fine tuning helps if you have a lot of data and in your domain that nobody else has. So the model really doesn't understand that, and you can help it understand it in a better way. But that said, it is like if this model is proprietary to you, nobody else is going to look at it, fine. But anybody who can query that model can query any of the data that you've shown it. So, for example, if you're a company and you decide to train the model on all the enterprise data that you have, if you happen to include the HR data of how much somebody's going to get paid or what's happening, good luck. Anybody has access to that data now inside the organization, not outside, but inside. But that might be too tricky to too proprietary that you don't want to make. So those are the kind of things that you want to think about as you think about governance, putting around data as well. There are other ways to still leverage all your data, and that's where the vector DBs, etc., that we talked about come in before. But those are some key things to think about as you start to design your systems, etc., even before you get to
Yeah,
the
setting
vendors.
these guardrails is a really important part of this AI development, right, Rajat? And when enterprise leaders are setting these guardrails and using these tools and infrastructure, the positive is that you can deploy fast and you can build on your core competencies, right? But the negative around that also is that it puts everybody at a level playing field in terms of what you have access to. Everybody has access now to foundation models. Everybody has access to tools and infrastructure. So as a business school student and having strategy in been a part of my career, the first question then that emerges for me is how are you going to differentiate in this market, right? Is it unique data sets that you have access to? Is it speed, your ability to deploy and come fast to market? What's going to differentiate you when you have this level playing field, right? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a great one and an important one for most businesses, right? It's less about oh, I have this huge team and this technology that I can build out anything and nobody else can. Uh, Even if you have a 2 year head start, that goes away like that because things are just based under the covers, right? So you're right. I mean, the couple of things that you mentioned are probably super key. One is how do you as a company uh, differentiate from others today, right? It's based on the services or products that you're providing to folks in some fashion. And that's often based on a knowledge that you have about that domain, or the connections with the customers that you have, the distribution channels that you have, etc. Those start to play an even bigger role now than they were even before, I would say. From the data perspective, if you have tons of data that's proprietary, that's very focused on your domain because of you've been selling this particular chip, for example, for the longest time, etc., and you are the only one who has that kind of data. That definitely helps you in the business or in the product that you're building, and it's important to be able to leverage that. The traditional modes like the distribution channels that I mentioned are still important. They don't change, right? They don't go away. But now what's going away in some sense is perhaps the lead you might have where you had built a model 2 years ago and you were doing something interesting. Now, you know what? Unless that model had some proprietary data and you can continue to leverage that's gone. You have to really rethink some of that. And so things at each point, that speed of execution that you alluded to again, that becomes a lot more important if you have two, competitors in the same space with similar data sets. Maybe this one is 60% more data set or maybe 2x more. But if this one moves twice as fast or 4 times as fast, and they could, things are going to change very, very rapidly, right? So how do you leverage that? So speed of execution definitely becomes important, and more so than before, I guess, right? I think the leveraging the one key thing with the speed of execution becomes, okay, how do you innovate in terms of new products? Now, in terms of, there are certain things that are existing and that continue to remain, retail per se, retail is not going away anywhere. I mean, people still want to buy stuff, but how people buy stuff might change significantly. We've seen recommendations, etc., improve over time. Those are, think of those being on steroids. Can you do something like that in your space itself, right? On the advertising side, for example, it's not just about the content that's already there that people are creating. It's like these machines can create a lot of content. So how can you leverage that as well, right? In terms of, if you're building new things, can you change your, maybe you had three designs today because it takes a lot of time to build those designs. Can you change that process, so instead of three, you have 300 designs now, right? And particularly coupled with some of the other advancements that we've seen over the years in terms of more, actually in manufacturing, you might actually, build something only after it's ordered, etc., particularly if it's a large thing. Now it can change some of the options on the other side as well and really start to change the ecosystems, right? So a lot of that, the key pieces, do they change in terms of what matters to the business? No, but how do we think about them starts to become, more important, particularly around innovation. And we've always stressed that, yeah, innovators, are going to change things and it's a threat. We need to worry about it. That speed of innovation is increasing tenfold now. I think that's probably the biggest risk.
Yeah, Rajat, and that triggers me to also add a few points to the initial conversation we had, where if you're an enterprise leader, you want to you want to put people in positions who have domain expertise and tech acumen both, right? But also sounds like one of the key skills that these new enterprise leaders need to have is the ability to moderate across multiple skill sets, right? And the fact that you've got many tools and infrastructure that can support you, but being able to cut across all of this, being able to identify which ones to use, it's almost like building Lego blocks, right? And being able to know what Lego blocks to put in place could differentiate what you're doing and could also impact, like you said, the speed at which you're bringing these services to market. Rajat, this has been an amazing conversation. Any other last points you have for our audience as they think about how to build AI products and services around tools and infrastructure? Anything else you want to share with our audience here?
I think we covered most things, so thank you for that. In terms of, look, overall, as you alluded to and you've been talking about in your podcast, I guess this is a really big change that's happening. The sooner we start embracing this and start moving towards it, the better it will be. But doing it right. I mean, thinking about the pieces that we talked about, putting those the right business leaders, etc. Like you said, Arvind. And in fact, the Lego blocks analogy is an interesting one. I would say add one more thing to that. That in this case, like Lego blocks traditionally were just of one kind, maybe different colors. Now think about it. Instead of just having that one block, you have 20 different blocks of different types that you want to put together. You want people who can really think about putting them together in
Yes,
a great
absolutely, Rajat. I think that's an excellent close to our session today. So, for our audience, it's a really exciting time to be a leader, and even to be a product manager or director of a business unit, because, like Rajat has pointed out today, you have a plethora of tools and infrastructure that can help you, from building your own models to fine tuning existing foundation models to prompt engineering, inference, model observability, reliability, training, production, the whole supply chain and the whole life cycle of operations as it pertains to AI. You have a plethora of tools and services. And being able to leverage these right tools and services to add value for your customers is going to make or break your business in the next couple of years. So it's an exciting time. Definitely leverage all these tools and services, and lean upon those core competencies that Rajat has brought out in today's episode of speed, domain knowledge, tech acumen, etc. That's going to help you as you go forward in this journey. Rajat, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll host you again as you go through your journey of AI in our podcast in the next couple of months. Thank you so much, Rajat.
Arvind, great interview. Give us the breakdown on what we should be paying attention to in that. What are your key points?
Sure. I think, this conversation with Rajat Stewart brought out the fact that it is so important finally to pay attention to the basics, right? As complicated as things go, you still got to break it down to the basics, right? And once you break it down to the basics, it's easy to understand any level of complexity. So there's three key things that Rajat brought out for us, and they were really insightful. The first one is that as a business leader today, when you are building AI products and services, the question you got to ask yourself is what within those AI products and services, what do you want to be known for? What is your core competency, the value you are building? And what can you outsource, right? If something is not a part of your core functionality, why would you want to build it inside your company, right? You can outsource it, give it to someone else who's an expert, right? I mean, the most simplest example of this is if you look at what's happening in the cloud, and the reason why cloud industry evolved and picked up is as a software entrepreneur or as any sort of entrepreneur, you don't need to go in and maintain infrastructure and figure out what servers to buy and how to connect them, what networks, what softwares to run on them, how do you maintain them in the long run. Today, AWS does all that for you, right? So all you need to think about is, hey, what does my consumer want? What type of software should I build on top of this cloud and take it to market, right? So that is the smart way today of building businesses. And so, the first most important key question as an entrepreneur or as a business leader to ask is what is existing out there already that people are good at? And how can I leverage that to build my AI products and services? And that's what you call the tooling and infrastructure layer today that's emerging, right? Now, in the AI space, that the second takeaway is that that tooling and infrastructure layer um, there's two parts to it in how you can leverage it as an enterprise leader. Once you know what your core competency is and you decide to build AI products and services, the first set of tools and infrastructure that's available for you is on the front end, which is what sort of models do I have to build? What sort of training do I have to do? How do I take this AI product and service to market? All of that is on the front end. But then once you know what your use case is, as an example, let us say that you want to build a artificial intelligence into the cameras that you're selling, and you know that you figured out what the value is, which is, let's say, burglar detection. That's the AI feature, and mapping that burglar detection to a police database, right? And figuring out if it's, how to navigate this situation. Let's say AI does all that. That's the idea, that's the use case. And but beyond that, taking this product to market and producing the actual final software is a whole new game in the world of AI. And so there's tools and infrastructure today available to do that also. So you can look at both, right, from a tooling and infrastructure space. Finally, once you decide to do this, once you decide to leverage these tools and infrastructure and build your product, how do you decide who to hire? And how do you decide how to build that team? Great, there are a set of tools available out there, but you still need a set of team of people to do this, right? And again, that's where it goes down to the basics. I think what Rajat said was amazing. He said the first thing you need is someone with a product centric mindset. It's not someone with a pure technology mindset, right? You need the product centric mindset because only when you know what the use case is, you understand what the tools, the technology, and what that technology team needs to be that you have to build. So start with that use case, at least have a vision for how you want to add value to your customer. And then building the team becomes really easy because you know how sophisticated your technology engineers need to be, you know how sophisticated your tooling needs to be. So start with that, right? Start with someone who has a product mindset in your team and then build a team on that. I thought that was really insightful. Of course, Rajat also went in to talk about the type of AI engineers you need, and he spoke about the type of data scientists you need. But the starting point I thought was brilliant. And that's why I said going down to basics sometimes is very powerful in all these complicated situations. So, yeah, it was a great episode. I hope our users took away a lot from it. And I want to thank Rajat for all his insights.
Yeah, great stuff. We've sprawled and we've crawled and we've had a great time today with Arvind and Rajat Monga. So I'm just going to say thanks to everybody for such a great episode. Cheers, Arvind.
Thanks, Stuart.
If you like our podcast, please like, subscribe, or tell a friend. I'm Stuart Black, and see you next time on Unpacked.